As everyone knows, my name is Sarah Baker. I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and listen to my speeches for my communication class. The National Fire Protection Association, commonly known as the NFPA, published a study stating that only 4% of career firefighters are women. Comparatively, in the same study, they published that 13% of police officers are women and 20% of the U.S. military are women. Women have faced and continue to experience inequalities when working in the fire service. I will start by giving a brief overview about the history of women in fire service. Then I will discuss some current statistics and inequalities women face. To understand context, let's dive into a brief overview about women in firefighting. The first known female firefighter in the United States was Molly Williams, a slave in the early 1800s. Although she was the first known firefighter, she's not considered to be the first recognized firefighter, who was Emma Vernal in 1936 in New Jersey. It still took many years for the first female firefighter to be paid, which was in 1973. That was Sandra Forcier in North Carolina. That was nearly 100 years after the first paid male firefighter. One of the most famous court cases in firefighting history was a woman named Brenda Berkman when she sued the city of New York in 1982. She sued New York City about a discriminating physical test that prevented women from entering the fire service. She won, and Berkman and 40 other women became the first female firefighters in New York City. Over 10 years after that court case, there was the first female fire chief. Chief Rosemary Bliss was the first fire chief in 1993 in Tiburon, California. Now that we have discussed some previous information about women in the fire service, let's look at some current statistics. In 2002, only 2% of all firefighters were female in the United States, compared to 4% now, 20 years later. Famously, Mayor Eric Garcetti in the Los Angeles area stated in 2013 he would make sure that 5% of the Los Angeles Fire Department would be women by 2020. In 2021, only 3.7% were women. In New York City and Chicago today, women make up only about 1% of their fire service. Now, there are some more progressive departments, such as San Francisco and Minneapolis. They have reported 15% of their fire service being women. Why is the fire service predominantly male? External biases label firefighting as a gendered job due to the perception of physical strength needed. According to the NFPA, about 4% of calls every year are fire-related calls. Another 4% is mutual aid calls for a fire to another area, which leaves 92% of calls to be medical calls. Medical calls require skills including medical expertise, the ability to display warmth, patience, and empathy for their patients. Now that we've reviewed the history and some statistics, let's talk about the inequalities women face today. Improper gear, lack of facilities, the inability to advance, and harassment are just some of the things women have to experience in the fire service. Women do not have access or are not given properly fitting PPE or personal protective equipment. PPE is used to enter IDLH, which is immediately dangerous to life and health zones. According to the International Association of Women in Fire and Emergency Services, 80% of women surveyed reported having ill-fitting gear. Poor-fitting gear is not just a comfort issue, it is a safety issue. Too tight of gear can lead to lack of movement or restriction, and too loose of gear can allow chemicals, heat, and fire inside the gear, leading to illness and injury. In addition to improper gear, there are many departments with no or lacking facilities for women to sleep, eat, and relax. Most firehouses were built just for men, including bunk rooms, bathrooms, and showers. According to the International Association of Women in Fire and Emergency Services, half of the women reported that they had privacy issues. Additionally, women at the Los Angeles Fire Department stated that sometimes they have to walk through the men's sleeping quarter or showers in order to get to their areas. With such a physically and mentally demanding job, with shifts ranging from 12 to 48 hours, proper facilities to decompress are needed with acceptable comfortability. Additionally, women face the scrutiny and inability to progress professionally in the fire service. There is little documented information about women in leadership positions. Organizational structure, promotional systems, and absence of equal work environments are factors that have led to the lack of women in leadership positions. Women also face varying degrees of harassment in the fire service. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, has a handbook for female firefighters. In there, they publish that up to 85% of women in the fire service have experienced some form of sexual harassment. Overall, I've discussed the history of women in the fire service, current statistics, and inequalities women experience. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to inform yourselves about inequalities women face in the fire service.